So, what if the very thing that was supposed to trigger an economic disaster, Trump's tariffs, actually sparked a $3 trillion investment into the United States? It's a fascinating twist. Once upon a time, we had a thriving auto industry in Detroit. Then Bill Clinton signed the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, which allowed corporations to outsource labor to Mexico, weakening American unions. If you're General Motors, that was a great deal. But for workers in Michigan and Ohio, it felt like a slap in the face. And here's the crazy part. We were told that Trump's tariffs would destroy the economy. Experts warned of inflation, job losses, and a stock market crash. Some even speculated that Trump wanted a crash to pressure the Federal Reserve into cutting interest rates, allowing his insiders to buy up cheap stocks. For a while, it seemed like they might be right. The VIX fear index spiked, the stock market dipped, and even Bitcoin had a correction. Tariffs became the villain in every headline. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of a financial meltdown, Trump's tariffs triggered over $3 trillion in investments flowing back into American factories, supply chains, and job markets. So today I want to explore what really happened. Why was this reckless policy actually reindustrializing the US and shifting the global economy? By the end of this video, you'll understand why a strategy once criticized as foolish is now making a strong case for staying invested in the market, even when things seem to be falling apart. Let's dive into the history that brought us to this point, because this story began way before Trump's tariff tweets. When Donald Trump says, "Make America great again," what does that really mean? When was that great moment? He's not just talking about vibes or slogans. Trump is referring to a very specific time in US history, the period before 1913, when America was built on tariffs. You see, until 1913, America had no income tax. Instead, tariffs funded the government. America was booming, so much so that there were blue ribbon commissions whose job was to figure out how to spend the surplus. That's the America Trump wants to return to. His use of tariffs wasn't random. It was part of a strategy to rebuild that original economic engine. To understand Trump's tariff strategy, we need to rewind to the end of World War II. In 1945, the world needed to rebuild. So the US took a step back and reduced tariffs. We let other countries keep their tariffs high to help them recover. This was the Marshall Plan applied to trade. Open the US market, and in return, we helped Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, and Korea rebuild. The idea was solid at the time because the US had the power to help rebuild the world. But then, something important happened. Over the decades, many countries kept their tariffs high and trade barriers in place long after they were economically competitive. Meanwhile, the US maintained one of the lowest tariff policies in the world. By the 2000s, tariffs in the US were averaging around 3 to 4%, while countries like India and those in the EU had much higher tariffs. This created a major disadvantage for US exporters. This is where things start to get interesting. The US allowed the playing field to tilt against American workers for decades. Factories moved overseas, communities suffered, and whole industries were decimated. But here's a surprising statistic. Life expectancy for Americans without a college degree dropped significantly. It's not just a problem of food, medicine, or air, it's despair. And this despair was the backdrop for Trump's thinking on trade. Trump had been talking about trade imbalances since the 1980s, long before he ran for president. He pointed out that the US was being taken advantage of by other countries. In 2016, when Trump stepped into office, the damage was already done. Factories had moved overseas, jobs were lost, and US industries were struggling. Trump's solution? A simple question: who has the power? The US is the world's largest consumer. We buy everything from everyone, which means we hold most of the leverage. Trump decided to use tariffs, a tool most economists thought outdated and dangerous. But he wasn't using them to punish consumers or crash the economy. He was using them strategically to renegotiate global trade and bring manufacturing back to the US. As Trump applied pressure, the media screamed, "Tariffs will crash the economy." But here's what they missed. This pressure wasn't meant to cause collapse, it was meant to shift the balance. And now we're seeing the result. Over $3 trillion in new investments are flowing into the US from countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and Taiwan. Some of the biggest names in business, Apple, Oracle, SoftBank, are pouring money into American industries. Just in the first 2 months of Trump's presidency, billions of dollars were committed to the US. But why did everyone get it so wrong? Most people missed the key point about tariffs and inflation. Let's use an example. 2 water bottles. One is made in the US and the other is from Fiji. They both cost $1. Now, if the US slaps a 20% tariff on the Fiji bottle, it now costs $1.20. The US bottle, still $1. That's not inflation. It's a consumption tax. You still get to choose which bottle to buy. Inflation happens when more money is printed and there's more money chasing the same products. So while people were blaming tariffs for inflation, something else was happening. The media missed the bigger picture, but we're seeing the results now. More jobs, more investment, and an economic shift that's bringing power back to the US. But here's the real question. How should you be investing now? The stock market is forward-looking. It doesn't care about today's fear. It cares about tomorrow's growth. Under Trump, from 2017 to 2020, the S&P 500 returned nearly 50 cents, even with all the chaos. The stock market is about long-term growth, and as we rebuild supply chains and factories in the US, that's where the opportunity lies. Warren Buffett once said, "Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful." And let me tell you, when the market drops and everyone panics, that's the moment to stay invested. Look at the market's performance from March 2009 to February 2020. Despite a global pandemic, the S&P 500 gained over 400%. If you tried to time the market, you would have missed it. The key takeaway? Don't try to time the market. History shows that the best performing investors are those who stay invested, even through the fear. So personally, I'm staying invested, knowing that the magic of compound interest is on